Allies express concern over U.S. peace proposal for Ukraine ahead of key talks in Geneva. Several of Ukraine's key allies voiced growing concern on Saturday over a new U.S. peace proposal that they believe leans too heavily in Russia's favor. European leaders say the plan, drafted with minimal consultation from Kyiv or European partners, requires significant revisions before it can be considered acceptable. The proposal reportedly includes major concessions to Moscow, such as asking Ukraine to relinquish occupied territories, abandon its pursuit of NATO membership, and accept limits on the size of its armed forces. These elements have sparked strong unease among European governments. In a joint statement, European leaders stressed that any changes involving EU or NATO matters must have the consent of EU and NATO members. While they said Washington's initiative was appreciated, they warned that the plan is a basis that still needs substantial work. Parts of the 28-point draft outline were described as helpful for shaping a sustainable peace, but officials emphasized that the document in its current form cannot be endorsed without revision. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky noted that the country is facing a difficult choice: accept the offer under pressure from the U.S. or risk losing vital support, yet insisted that Ukraine would not sacrifice its dignity. Former U.S. President Donald Trump, who issued a Thursday deadline for Kyiv to respond, said the proposal is not his final offer and remains open to adjustments. On the sidelines of the G20 summit, which the United States chose to boycott, European leaders met urgently to coordinate their stance. German Chancellor Friedrich Merz stated that the war can only end with the consent of Ukraine and Europe, calling it a conflict that directly impacts the entire continent. British Prime Minister Keir Starmer also welcomed U.S. engagement but agreed the plan needs further work. He held separate conversations with both Trump and Zelensky, signaling the UK's intention to stay closely involved in the diplomatic process. Leaders from 8 Nordic and Baltic countries reiterated their backing for Ukraine, insisting on solutions that respect the country's sovereignty and enhance regional security. They affirmed continued military support and efforts to deter further Russian aggression. High-stakes U.S. Ukraine talks begin Sunday in Switzerland. Top American and Ukrainian officials will meet Sunday in Geneva to refine the language of the peace proposal before a future meeting between Zelensky and Trump. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio and Ambassador Steve Witkoff are expected to participate. A separate U.S.-Russia meeting to discuss the proposal is also planned and is expected to happen quickly, though not in Geneva. Zelensky confirmed he has approved the composition of Ukraine's negotiating team, emphasizing that his representatives know how to defend Ukraine's national interests and prevent another invasion. Security advisors from the UK, France, and Germany will also take part in the Geneva discussions. A European diplomat, familiar with EU thinking, stressed that no peace deal can recognize occupation or restrict Ukraine's right to choose its alliances, nor can it impose caps on its armed forces. Clarification is also sought regarding the proposal's section on security guarantees for Ukraine. Meanwhile, European Council President Antonio Costa has called a special meeting of all 27 EU leaders on Monday to review the situation, scheduled to take place during the EU-African Union Summit.